Hello and welcome to the 15th video in this beginner series program, a tile puzzle game on the iPad using Cocos 2D. So in this video we're going to complete the last steps to actually implement the dragging of the tiles on the screen. So the first thing to do is go into gameplaylayer.h and add a boolean in called isAnimating in this way, because we'll be using this to say whether we're making the move or the animation of the tile going from one square to another, because during this time this will be set as a flag to yes, and we won't be able to, we'll make sure we can't detect any moves or drags or anything like that. So back into gameplaylayer.m, before we start looking at the actual executing the drag, let's go into touch began, and let's just say straight away here that at the end of this line here, if is animating, then we shall return no. And also we'll go straight down to touch moved here, and we'll also say if is animating, then just simply return, because we don't need to return anything. So if we're actually animating the move of a tile, then now we don't detect any touches or make any more drags. So now what to have a look at is how we go about actually making this tile drag. Well, first of all we're going to put in a tiny little void function here just above init. And it's going to say if the drag is finished, what is animating to no, because when we start making the drag, animating will be set to yes. And when the animation is finished, or it's actually technically a move action, not an animation, but I keep calling it animation. If the move action is finished, then we need to set this to no, and it'll be set to yes as the move action starts. And what we can do is we can make what's called an action to call this function when the move action has finished, and you'll see now how that works. So we're going to make a void function called execute tile drag, and this tile drag is going to take in three arguments. It's going to take the index of the tile that we're dragging, so that's that tile's individual number. It's going to take the square from and the square to in this way. And I'm going to paste in some code now which is stuff we've seen completely before in this project before I get onto the new stuff. So I'm just saying here that putting to the log where we're dragging from and to, and which tile we're actually dragging, what the index number of this tile is. And then I'm getting two floats here to get the x and y positions on the screen using our get x and get y coordinate from tile column and tile row that you've seen before inside the initialization function. And then simply creating those to a point and logging that to the screen, because this will be the point where our tile is going to move to, obviously. So how do we move something then in Cocos 2D? We do it using something called actions. So I'm going to here make a float variable called duration. This will be the duration in seconds of how long our action is going to last. So our sliding action of the tile will be set to last 0.2 seconds. And at this point I'm going to set isAnimating equal to yes. And now in Cocos 2D what's really good is you've got a useful set of lots of different types of actions. If you want to know what they all are, then have a look at the documentation. And we're going to be using in this example something called a CC move to, which moves whatever object you apply it to a certain point. And we're going to use another one called CC call func, which calls a function that you specify. And you can make as many of these actions as you want, and you can then make a sequence of them. And then you add this, you run this sequence on an object. So in this case we're going to run it on our tile sprite, and the sequence will be the move first and then call drag done. So to set these up, the first thing we need is to set up our move action. So we'll call it move action, just type ID. It's a CC move to, an action with duration, which is 0.2f, and the position it's going to is the 2 point. So from wherever we're starting, it'll try and get in 0.2 seconds to the 2 point. The second action we need is then the one to call the drag done. So I've called it call drag done, and it's of type CC call function. It's action with the target itself because it's on this layer, and the selector is the function name of what you're calling, or we're calling drag is finished, where we then set animating back to no. The next thing we need to do then is actually select our sprite that we're going to make this action on. Well, we know on that we've got our tile index, so we simply need to use this tile index to access our sprite, which I store in selected tile. And then we simply say, take the selected tile, and it has a method called runAction, and then we use something called a CC sequence object where we can sequence our actions in the order we want them to take place. So our move action will take place and move our sprite, and then our call drag done will take place, which sets animating back to to no. And the last thing that we need to do, of course, is we've moved a tile, so we need to make sure that we keep our board occupants up to date. So what's at square 2 is now equal to square from, and square from is now obviously the empty. And then for debugging, at the bottom of this function, we'll print the board. So the last thing we need to do is actually call this so we execute the drag. And this happens inside the CC moved, touch moved function here, next to this legal. So we'll call self and execute tile drag, and this will be from the board occupants at square drag start square, because that's the tile we're dragging. The square from is the drag start square, and the square 2 obviously is the sqt square 2 that we've named in this function. And that's all we need to do it, because when we do this animation, of course, is animating is switched on, so we won't be taking in any more moves or drags. So I'll save this and now click run and hope it builds, and it does. And now the application's running, and let's have a look what happens. If I select this tile here, you can see now the tiles are moving around the board, and if I try and drag a tile down here, it's not doing anything, it's detecting the moves are illegal, and we can select and switch our tiles around as we need on the board. So that's actually the functionality of the game actually fully working. And the only thing we need to do now is really the cosmetic parts of the game, which is add on our reset, our hard and easy, and the game 1 smiley face. So thanks very much for watching. Comments, questions, criticisms welcome as always on YouTube.